HouseMD, or House as most of us called it, was one of my favorite TV shows growing up, and I still love it. I love rewatching it because, especially someone who is as fascinated with psychology as I am, the way they managed to really touch on how multifaceted we as humans are and our psyches are, that was always something that really kept me engaged. And recently I was watching an episode where it really got me thinking about the difference between being numb and being neutral, because they can look very similar, but they don't feel the same. Because when it comes to choosing to be neutral and working towards being neutral versus being sort of habitually numb, again, from the outside, they can look very similar, but inside they are two very, very different things. So this is something that I wanted to touch on. All right, guys, welcome back to another episode. I'm Ann Blackwood, your Silicon Valley Sage Sister, here to bring consciousness to the forefront of your daily life. I love the TV show House, and one of the things that they did a really good job of was portraying what it's like to be numb. Take it from me. House's character really does all of these things to himself, ends up getting depressed without really realizing it, and I know what that's like, and winds up being very numb to all of the things that he does, to the point where he finds himself, for anybody who knows the shows, completely alienating the rest of his team, to the point where he has to get a new one. And in one of these episodes, in the transition period from, well, I guess it's the episode, the very last episode, where he has his old team, one of his patients looks at him at the end of the episode and says, your people are leaving you. You should be sad. And House says, yeah. And then the guy looks at him again and says, but you don't seem to be. And House looks at him and says, no, I'm not. And you can tell from the way they portray House, he has this egotism that presents itself as attempting to be neutral, when really what it is, if you were to sort of deconstruct it, it's really a numbness from habitual, regular depression, especially when it comes to the kind that is brought on by one's own lifestyle, as it is in House. This really got me thinking about, because I have been habitually numb and habitually depressed without even realizing it, and I have brought myself to a place of actual mental neutrality, which is a big thing in spirituality when it comes to being able to get yourself in what people would consider the spiritual mindset, that state of being able to be calm, peaceful, and loving, which I kind of touched on in my last video. Neutrality as a mindset is something that's worked on and chosen, as where numbness, that's something we actually really end up doing to ourselves out of not being willing to heal and change. Eventually, we have so much, I don't want to use the word trauma per se because of the connotations, but we have so much, we have so many bad things going on in our lives. Often things that we very much do to ourselves, or certainly don't try to make any better. And so we end up getting numb to all the badness. And that can very much end up looking like neutrality, because we're so used to it that, it happened. But there's a difference between not facing something and going, it happened, and being able to fully face it and still walk out on the other side of going through it with, it happened. That's neutrality. being hit in the head and not feeling it because you've been hit in the head so many times that your nerves don't even register it anymore, versus getting hit in the head and saying, ow, that hurt, it happened. You can see how those would be two very different things. Being habitually used to badness, a bad life, to the point where you just don't care anymore, is very different than doing everything you possibly can to make your life healthy and happy, and walking out on the other side from a place of zero judgment and neutrality. No expectations. Those are some major differences, because being able to, no matter what comes your way, whether you're happy or sad, work through everything without expectations, without judgment, ready to learn the lessons, ready to continue to thrive and get back up, is very different than just sort of mindlessly and numbingly just walking through life, just trying not to care. There's a difference between caring and still meeting everything with neutrality, not getting upset or excited in either direction, versus being so depressed because you haven't healed, being so sad without even realizing it that you're just numb to everything. And I feel like this is really important to note, because I feel like what people don't realize, like at the time I didn't realize, that it wasn't that I was handling things well. It's that I was just so used to bad things happening that I was numb to it as a defense mechanism, as a coping mechanism. I had numbed myself to the bad things happening because I wasn't prepared to deal with them. But when we are able to approach every situation, especially every bad situation, ready to heal, approaching it not as if it's bad, but as a lesson. That's not to ignore that it's a bad thing, but not dwelling on it either. And then using and having the appropriate tools, skills, and habits required to take things on as they come on, rather than just bulldoze through them. Living life with intention rather than with a blindfold on. Life then allows you to actually experience the happiness, because when we're numb, we're just always numb to everything. When we're living life from a place of neutrality, we choose how we're going to feel about things in the grand scheme of things, and then can choose to be neutral or happy or sad. Having a healthy way to, rather than cope with things, actually deal with them. There was a time when I genuinely thought that I was dealing, when really I was just coping. There was a time where I thought that what I was doing was healthy, even though I knew that there were some things in my life that were still unhealthy. I thought I was still doing the right thing overall, and eventually I came out the other side and realized just how depressed and numb I was. And the thing is that no matter how numb you get, eventually you have to heal from all those things. So if you take the time to heal every time, rather than letting them build up, it stings a whole lot less when you deal with them on an individual basis, rather than waiting for them to all well up inside until you have this massive mess that is definitely gonna hurt to heal. And as I say, change doesn't have to be hard, healing doesn't have to be hard, and change doesn't have to be painful. When we're willing to live our lives with intention and live in the moment, dealing with things as they come, not putting them off, not numbing ourselves to them, but handling them from a place of neutrality in the beginning, so that we can then decide where to go with it, we are always going to be happier and healthier than, like I said, if we're letting everything pile up to the point where the healing becomes overwhelming because we put it off. And this goes for pretty much anything in life, whether it be a pile of work, homework, schoolwork, work, emotions, good things, bad things. When we work towards making sure that we're meeting everything as it comes to us and dealing with everything as it comes to us, rather than putting anything off, we can allow ourselves the space to actually be happy and healthy rather than numb out to life in the world. And I can promise you, being numb, well, it's less painful in the moment. Like any numbing agent, when it wears off, the pain comes back full force. And I think I want to end with this. The one and only time as a kid that I took pseudoephedrine when I was sick. It made me feel better for a little while, but then when it wore off, the pain was unbearable all of a sudden. And I didn't realize how much pain I was in, because when we get sick, it happens a little bit at a time. So we habituate, we get used to the discomfort because it's come on a little bit at a time. But then you add something, whether it be a medicine or emotional numbing, whatever it may be, that alleviates the pain for a short amount of time. You're only alleviated for a short period of time. And then after that, the pain comes back and you're in just as much pain as you were before, but it feels 10 times worse because it came back all at once. It didn't slowly come back. And this is a great metaphor for life in general, because, well, it's kind of a good metaphor and it's kind of not. If we can do the things to keep us from getting that sick in general, do the things to heal, then they don't have to pile up to be that painful. And then we don't have to do anything to numb. And then we don't have to get smacked in the face with the pain when we finally decide to deal with it. If we finally decide to deal with it, because some people never do. And that is a miserable life, let me tell you. So we're all better off taking the time to heal and then learning how to work from a place of neutrality rather than getting so depressed because we've been so overwhelmed that we end up numbing ourselves out. Because eventually, most people do end up facing the pain. And I can tell you right now, the longer you wait, the more painful it is. Not forever, but it's definitely worth learning those tools, skills, and habits, as I call them, to be happy and healthy right now, healing, and then moving forward to better than spending your life numb. Because it may not be painful now. It may not seem painful now, but it is painful, and it's only going to get worse. All right, guys, thank you for joining me for another video. I know this was a serious one, but I really felt like I needed to touch on this. So, yeah. May the energy you serve you well, and let's keep making our way through.